Have you ever found yourself completely, utterly trapped in your own head over a relationship? And I mean, obsessing.
Oh, absolutely. It's an awful feeling.
Right. I mean, it's 2 in the morning. The blue glow of your phone is just illuminating the room. And you are checking to see if they read a message.
Yeah, or you find yourself analyzing a completely benign comment from, like, 3 weeks ago.
Yes. Convinced that it is the ultimate key to decoding everything they are thinking.
It is an incredibly suffocating state to be in, you
Yeah.
know? Your entire reality just sort of collapses inward until the whole universe is reduced to the size of a single text message bubble.
And usually when we talk about that specific brand of relationship anxiety, that paralyzing rumination, we just blame love.
Sure, we tell ourselves we're in agony because our feelings are just that profound,
Exactly. Or we blame the other person for not giving us enough certainty. But what if that agony has absolutely nothing to do with romance?
which is a wild thought.
Right. What if it is just a mechanical failure in how your life is currently structured?
And that is a complete paradigm shift. We are looking at a really fascinating framework today that suggests this obsessive pain is often a symptom of something entirely different, like a shrinking life.
That is the premise we're exploring in this deep dive. We are looking past the surface level drama of, arguments and breakups.
To examine the unseen structural forces in your life?
Right. We're talking about your daily routines, your ambient social interactions, and your physical environment. The underlying argument here is that these structural forces secretly dictate your emotional state far more than any romantic partner ever could.
To really understand how this works mechanically, we can look at the inciting incident from the source material we're analyzing today. The specific catalyst for the individual in this case study was a partner's emotional infidelity.
Now, conventionally, an event like that is treated as the end of the psychological investigation, right?
Exactly. Someone betrays your trust, you feel terrible, case closed.
But the framework points out that the infidelity alone does not actually explain the months of relentless internal looping and rumination that followed.
No, not at all. The infidelity was really just the spark. The explosive material that kept the fire burning was a fundamental shift in this person's life structure.
Specifically, they had recently transitioned into an entrepreneurship phase, working entirely from home.
Which, I mean, on paper, leaving a traditional job for entrepreneurship sounds like the ultimate liberation.
Total freedom. You control your schedule, you eliminate the commute.
You're entirely self-directed. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if we look at the neurological reality of that shift, it involves a sudden, massive drop in social density. You're stripped of the team environment.
And you lose those casual, low-stakes collisions with coworkers in the hallway.
Right. And you lose the immediate daily feedback loops that kind of tell you where you stand in the world.
It is like sitting in a room with a ticking clock. If
Yeah.
the window is open, you can hear city traffic, and the television is murmuring in the background, and people are walking through the house.
You don't even perceive the ticking of the clock.
You don't. But moving into a solitary work-from-home setup is like soundproofing that room and turning off all the appliances.
Well, yeah.
Suddenly, the only thing you can hear is the ticking of that romantic relationship. It becomes deafening because it is the only sound left.
The ambient noise that usually regulates our nervous system has just been muted. And what makes this case study so compelling is that this person wasn't just sitting in the dark, wallowing.
No, they were highly active.
Very active. They were reading dense material, working out constantly, playing tennis, even studying a new language.
Which, those sound like the exact habits of a highly functional person, but there is a hidden flaw there.
A huge one.
Every single one of those activities, the reading, the fitness, the language study, they are entirely solitary pursuits.
Right. They do not provide any actual social friction. And this collided spectacularly with this person's underlying psychological wiring. The notes categorize them mechanically as an external processor.
We often hear terms thrown around like extroverted thinking type.
Yeah, and regardless of how much stock you put into specific personality assessments, the cognitive mechanism itself is very real. There are people whose brains function like combustion engines that require external oxygen to run.
They do not form solid conclusions by thinking in isolation.
Exactly. They need to bounce ideas off other human beings. They thrive on observing complex social dynamics and debating concepts. They literally require reality-based human interactions to regulate their own emotions.
So when you take a brain wired for external processing and you reduce its environment to a quiet home office and a few solitary hobbies.
You starve it of its primary psychological nutrient. The brain starts gasping for oxygen.
And because the romantic relationship is the only deeply interactive element left in their life, it gets drafted to do the work of an entire social ecosystem.
It is forced to occupy a massive, disproportionate amount of their cognitive space.
It's an impossible burden for any one relationship to bear. The partner is suddenly expected to be the coworker, the casual acquaintance, the debate opponent, and the confidant all at once.
The relationship becomes the only active, unpredictable variable in a completely static life. When your world is that small, a delayed text message doesn't just feel like a minor annoyance.
Right. It feels like a threat to your only source of psychological oxygen.
Exactly.
So if sitting alone in a soundproofed room makes the ticking clock deafening, how do you actually drown it out?
Well, for the entrepreneur we are tracking, the realization didn't happen in a therapist's chair or during a breakthrough conversation with their partner.
It happened completely by accident at an airport.
They were entirely consumed by this obsessive, painful mental loop, and suddenly, standing in the terminal, they experienced a wave of profound physical relief.
Okay, when I first read about this airport epiphany, I really wanted to push back on the concept.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, I found myself wondering, is an airport just a massive sensory overload? I mean, you have announcements blaring, people rushing past you, rolling luggage everywhere. Is this relief just a temporary distraction caused by loud noises, or is there an actual, genuine perspective shift happening in that environment?
It is a genuine neurological shift, actually, and it comes down to how the brain manages cognitive load.
Okay.
For weeks, this person's brain was operating like a computer, dedicating all of its RAM to a single background application.
Just burning through power.
Exactly. The entire processing power of their mind was consumed by three questions. Did she reply to my message? Did she delete the chat history? What is she thinking right now?
They were treating a text thread like a life or death survival scenario.
Because in a shrunken world, the brain interprets it as one. But an airport forces your nervous system to witness scale.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you are physically immersed in an environment with thousands of people.
You are watching the flight board flip with destinations on entirely different continents. You are surrounded by people navigating completely different life trajectories. It forces a state of sonder.
That sudden realization that every random passerby has a life as vivid and complex as your own.
Yes, the sheer volume of that reality shatters the illusion of the small world. The brain's focus is forcibly zoomed out.
Standing there, this person was suddenly hit with the reality of everything else happening in their life.
They remember their father's upcoming surgery.
They remembered the very real challenges of that new business. They remembered they were in a new city with potential clients to meet, new neighborhoods to explore, and entirely new stories waiting to unfold.
The brain was flooded with so much external stimuli that it literally lacked the processing power to keep ruminating on the relationship.
The nervous system receives undeniable physical proof that the world is vast and completely indifferent to your specific relationship drama.
The anxiety is downregulated because the brain recognizes that the relationship issue is no longer the only thing in the environment.
Which brings us to the core psychological concept underpinning all of this. The framework refers to it as the environmental contraction effect.
And the central thesis is brilliantly straightforward. When your life radius shrinks, your emotions get magnified.
Think of it like dropping a large stone into a very small glass of water.
Right. The water level spikes dramatically. It might even spill over.
But if you drop that exact same stone into a sprawling lake, it barely makes a ripple.
Exactly. When your environment contracts down to just your apartment and your phone screen, every minor emotional fluctuation feels like a tidal wave.
Applying this to the classic heartbreak behavior we see everywhere completely flips the script.
It really does. Because when people go through a breakup or a rough patch, the universal instinct is to retreat.
We cancel plans, we stay home in sweatpants, we isolate ourselves from our friends, and we essentially drop our ambitions. We cocoon.
And we culturally view that cocooning as a necessary healing phase. The assumption is that we are conserving energy to protect ourselves while our emotional wounds recover.
But this framework suggests that cocooning is actually a massive evolutionary mismatch. We think we are healing, but we are actually starving the brain of the exact environmental data it needs to recalibrate our baseline.
The human brain is, at its core, a highly efficient pattern recognition machine. It requires new inputs to process reality correctly, new challenges, different social interactions, varying environments.
So if you lock yourself in your apartment, you are depriving the machine of new data.
And an efficient processing machine with idle power doesn't just turn off. It endlessly recycles the old data, It loops through the pain.
And the irony is how our culture romanticizes that exact looping behavior.
Oh, constantly.
We tell ourselves a very comforting story. We say, I am scrolling through these old chat histories and I am overanalyzing every memory because my love for this person is just so deep and profound.
It is a narrative that feels good, but it's fundamentally flawed. That obsessive behavior is not a measure of romantic devotion.
It's not.
No, it is simply a measure of misallocated cognitive energy. The rumination happens because your attention lacks a new outlet. Your brain is burning through the exhaust fumes of your past over and over again because you have stopped feeding it fresh fuel.
Okay, so if a listener is tracking with us and realizing that sitting alone in their apartment is the poison, the natural instinct is to swing 100 miles in the opposite direction.
Right. If isolation is the problem, then the hustle culture grind set must be the cure.
Bury yourself in work, travel constantly, optimize every minute of your day, and just outrun the feelings. The person in our case study even had this exact thought at the airport. They assumed if they had just been busier working when the infidelity happened, they would have brushed it off easily.
The framework addresses this directly, warning that using busyness as a cure is incredibly deceptive.
A half-truth, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There is a healthy aspect to it, but also a deeply destructive one.
Because substituting heartbreak with toxic productivity feels a lot like treating a broken leg with heavy painkillers and then trying to run a marathon.
That is a great way to put it.
You might not feel the pain for the first few miles because you were completely numb, but the structural damage is still there, the bone is still broken, and the second those painkillers wear off, you are going to collapse.
That analogy perfectly isolates the danger of the hustle culture cure. The true, helpful part of staying busy is that a new environment genuinely does help you escape toxic loops. This touches on a really comforting realization. Many of the deepest emotional problems in life are never explicitly solved in the way we want them to be.
Right. You rarely get the neat cinematic resolution. You don't always get the grand apology or the perfect moment of mutual closure.
Instead of being solved, those problems are often simply absorbed by new life experiences. The pain is diluted by an influx of new data until it is no longer toxic to your system.
That is the healthy side of expanding your life radius.
Yes, but the false side, the painkiller side of your analogy, is using busyness as an active tool of avoidance.
Using ambition to run away from vulnerability.
Exactly. When people use work to outrun their feelings, they intentionally shut down their capacity for communication. They refuse to face the underlying dynamics of the relationship, and they often choose to just abruptly cut ties.
Which, from the outside, looks incredibly impressive.
They appear highly driven, successful, and emotionally untouchable. The classic, I am too busy building my empire to care about this drama defense mechanism.
But internally, their emotional operating system hasn't updated at all.
Not even a little bit.
Yeah.
Because they used work to numb themselves, rather than to facilitate genuine introspection, their underlying behavioral patterns remain entirely untouched.
They haven't put in the reps required to learn how to navigate conflict.
Or how to express vulnerability, or how to communicate complex needs.
Which virtually guarantees that the exact same emotional crisis will detonate in their very next relationship. They haven't outgrown the problem.
They just postponed it.
Okay, so sitting on the couch obsessing is entirely unproductive. But turning into a soulless corporate robot who uses productivity to avoid all human vulnerability is also unproductive.
Right.
How does a mature person actually navigate this contraction? What is the actual target state?
The framework defines maturity as the active practice of coexistence.
Coexist.
It is moving away from binary thinking. It is not option A, where you dive headfirst into the relationship and let it drown your individual identity. And it is not option B, where you dive headfirst into your career and ignore your personal life.
True maturity is developing the capacity to let the complexities of a relationship and the ambitions of your personal life exist simultaneously.
Exactly.
Practicing coexistence sounds incredibly demanding. I mean, it means you have to sit in the discomfort of a relationship that might be failing. You have to observe the dysfunction, communicate honestly with your partner, and weigh the heavy decision of whether to stay or leave.
It's heavy. But the crucial distinction is that while you are processing all of that emotional weight, your life does not hit the pause button.
The engine of your life has to keep running.
You are still showing up for your career. You are still replying to your friends. You are still engaged with the world.
For the entrepreneur we've been following, restoring this balance meant actively reinvesting in multiple pillars of their life that had been allowed to crumble.
It required a very intentional outward focus. They had to deal with real-world family matters, like supporting their father through surgery. They had to actively advance their business strategy, rather than just passively logging hours at a desk.
They started looking into buying property, committed to improving a language skill, and began outlining a new creative project like a YouTube channel.
And most importantly, they deliberately expanded their social circle to invite new perspectives and friction back into their daily routine.
And the outcome of building out all those different pillars isn't that you magically stop caring about the relationship.
No, it's not about becoming apathetic. It is about proportion. By expanding your identity, the relationship naturally settles back into a healthy proportion of your mental real estate.
It becomes one slice of the pie rather than the entire pie.
When you expand your life radius, the emotional weight of the relationship is redistributed across a much stronger, wider structural foundation.
The pebble is no longer being dropped into a tiny glass of water.
It is being dropped into a lake.
It goes right back to that ticking clock. When the room is full of life, conversation, and activity, the clock is still ticking, but it is just background noise.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
As we wrap up this deep dive, there is a really powerful diagnostic tool embedded in these notes that we can all use, because it is so easy to trick ourselves when we are deep in the trenches of relationship anxiety.
It's incredibly easy to lose perspective.
So if you find yourself stuck in one of those loops right now, waiting for a text, hunting for subtext in a conversation, or trying to predict someone else's behavior, pause the analysis.
Stop looking at the relationship for a moment. Turn the lens inward and ask yourself a very confronting question.
Aside from this relationship, do I have anything else I am truly invested in and excited about right now?
If your honest answer to that question is no, your pain might just be a symptom of a narrowed life.
The core lesson from that airport terminal is that when your life begins to flow again, your emotional hurdles don't necessarily get fixed in a neat, satisfying way.
They just find their proper place in a much wider world.
True growth means your life moves forward, even if the pain hasn't entirely disappeared.
It completely reframes the goal of healing. It frames healing as a process of expansion rather than a process of erasure.
Which leaves us with a provocative thought to mull over. Our modern culture is completely obsessed with the concept of closure. We are constantly told that we need complete closure before we can move on.
That we need the final conversation, the clean slate, the perfect ending where everyone understands each other.
But what if closure is just a myth? What if the goal of healing isn't to perfectly erase a memory or to neatly tie up every loose end?
I love that.
What if the actual goal is simply to build a life so vast, so incredibly full of new projects, new passions, and new people, that your unresolved pain is no longer a ticking clock in a tiny, silent room, but just one small exhibit in the massive museum of your life?